Welcome to the Source One podcast. Consider us your on-the-go source for the latest insights in the procurement, supply management, and strategic sourcing industry. The term millennial as defining a generation is one that inspires negative connotations of laziness, disloyalty to employers, and entitlement to higher salaries and frequent promotions. In reality, however, the millennial generation brings skills and characteristics to the workplace that not only redefine what it means to be an employee, but work to reformat the traditional structures of a business setting. While the boundaries of birth years are somewhat vague surrounding who is considered a millennial, the generation is generally defined as those born between 1980 and 2000. With roughly 80 million people classified in this generation, the need to challenge these terrible stereotypes and embrace change in the workplace remains constant. Today we'll hear from three millennials and winners of Thomas Netz and the Institute for Supply Management's 30 Under 30 Rising Supply Chain Stars to get their perspective on the common misconceptions of the millennial generation and learn more about being a millennial in the supply chain management and procurement field. Let's start with introductions. Christina, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the background of the 30 Under 30 Award?
Sure thing. My name is Christina O'Hanley, and I'm a content marketing associate at thomasnet.com. And the 30 Under 30 Rising Supply Chain Stars program recognizes young purchasing and supply chain management professionals for their passion, creativity, and contributions to the industry. The initiative is a partnership between thomasnet.com and ISM. Winners receive a complimentary membership to ISM, empowering them to make an even bigger impact on their organizations. It also provides young, talented stars like Amrish, Aisha, and Michael with media exposure and personal branding opportunities to help them with their careers.
Thanks. Aisha, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Aisha Khan. I work at Johnson & Johnson. My current role is in e-commerce sales for our consumer sector, but have worked for 2.5 years previous to that in J&J's procurement function in agency space.
And Amrish, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Amrish Global, and I'm currently the Director for Global Logistics and Distribution within Baker Hughes' Global Supply Chain. I lead an organization of several hundred people across more than 50 global locations, and together we move product across different parts of our supply chain, whether it's from supplier to plant, or from plant to plant, or from plant to customers.
And Mike?
Mike Crosdell, Senior Project Manager at Source One Management Services. Source One is a strategic sourcing consulting company. I work in the supply chain, specifically MRO, or maintenance, repair, and operations.
Well, welcome. Aisha, what does being a millennial mean to you?
To me, being a millennial means being able to Google everything. So I've had an unprecedented access to data and knowledge ever since I was younger. And so that's just got me in the habit that anytime I have a question about anything, I go to the internet and I look it up. So that's what being millennial means to me.
Yeah, and I actually agree with Aisha. I mean, the term millennial itself is kind of like an overgeneralization or a stereotype, but to me, the biggest thing is the exposure to all the advances in technology, specifically the internet, which really sets the millennial generation apart from previous generations. So having all that knowledge at your fingertips is something that really changes the way you think about everything.
To me, being a millennial is really being part of what I call a generation without borders. I would go along with Aisha and Mike there in talking about the connected economy. We're a generation where we do speed over accuracy, if you will. Where faster decisions are being made, every second counts. We are moderate risk takers or high risk takers, and more importantly, we have a new sense of collaboration because millennials work with you and really not for you.
So we commonly hear all of the negative characteristics of millennials. They're entitled, disloyal, they have unrealistic expectations, or are extremely difficult to manage, just to name a few. But what is one misconception, if you had to choose just one, that you would want to change or dispel completely? Amrish, why don't we start with you?
You're right. There are many misconceptions out there for sure. But to me, we must start at the root of understanding that there are differences in what drives a millennial versus what drives different generations like baby boomers or Generation X. I am a millennial, and I work with several very, very loyal millennials that are extremely easy to manage. I believe millennials cherish their own space. They want to embrace a work-life integration and work hard to deliver quick results. It is true that millennials deliver and then want to move on to the next best thing. But if that opportunity is not within your group or within your team, you might lose them to someone else. So I would state that their loyalty is to results delivery over a particular function, and their expectations are undoubtedly different, but so are the results that they bring and nimbleness that they bring to the business.
Yeah, I would agree completely, actually. So to Amrish's earlier point, right, I think there are a lot of stereotypes. Unfortunately, some of them are negatives of millennials. But millennials are a very diverse generation, if not the most diverse generation. So I think it would behoove managers and those that are managing millennials to really think about them as individuals and to take the time to find out what drives them. Because I think everybody, no matter what generation you are, is entitled to happiness and being happy, whether that's a pay increase, whether that's a new role, whatever that may be. I think our generation is just prioritizes the pursuit of happiness. And so if that opportunity isn't in your group, then that's a challenge that you have to either fix it or let that person go.
Just to add to that, the job hopping thing really does get to me. I've personally stayed with my current company for over 4 years now, and plenty of my friends have stayed with theirs. I do understand it, and there's plenty of job hoppers in every generation, so I don't think it's something that's just prevalent in the millennial generation. I mean, 1 in 3 American workers today are millennials, so statistically speaking, you're going to see more millennials leaving their jobs than other generations just because there's more of them out there.
Okay. And sort of building on some of your answers to that question, what do you think actually motivates millennials, or at least what motivates you in your work in the supply chain field? And what would be your advice to managers who want to keep their millennial talent engaged? Mike?
So for me, I think a key motivator for millennials is to be able to see the value in their work. And for me specifically within strategic sourcing consultation and the execution of sourcing events, I can directly see the results, whether it's bottom line cost reduction or supplier improvement, which is very impactful for me and gives me a real feeling of value. I also can see it with assisting in implementation efforts and bringing in new suppliers and seeing the positive impact that they have on an organization. And me personally, I'd advise managers to show millennials the big picture, let them see the impact their work has, and that way they can understand that it's not just a menial or pointless task and really that overall big picture.
I can add on to that. Millennials are motivated by meaningful, interesting, and challenging work. So it's really those 3 components that make it very motivating and interesting for millennials. Supply chain is very dynamic. It's most certainly called the land of opportunity, and I see it that way, where the opportunities of tomorrow are very different from those that you see today. So multiply that by the different groups that you work with, the different cultures that you have to interact with, and the impact that all those decisions are going to have on the bottom line of your organization or your company, and you can see why supply chain is a very passionate career for several individuals. For example, this week alone, I have worked through developing solutions that involve the movement of products in Africa. We have strategized multi-million-dollar negotiations. We have reviewed options in logistics where we reroute freight to ensure reliable performance amid strikes in countries in Latin America, or even reviewing how an ADC system upgrade in Hong Kong International Airport has caused us to reroute some of our shipments to ensure we have reliable solutions provided. So my recommendation to managers dealing with millennial talent is give them interesting, meaningful work, make them feel included, and give them a sense of ownership so that they have the freedom to drive change and execute.
And I would agree with both Amrish and Mike. I think it's very important, obviously, to make sure that you are recognizing millennials for the great work that they're doing and showing them the value of their work while also challenging them. I think for me, I would actually challenge managers back, so those that manage millennials, and say make sure that you get to know millennials and that you're not having a blanket strategy and making assumptions for what motivates millennials. I think, again, going back to the diversity of our generation, making sure you treat each of them as individuals and really understanding what drives them.
Interesting. So, Aisha, what would you say attracted you to supply chain management, and why do you think it's a great field for millennials?
I think it's an excellent field for millennials, and I think for me, one of the main reasons was because supply chain is still such an evolving field. I think some of the other functions within companies, such as marketing, HR, finance, are a bit more mature in their evolution as functions, business functions, but supply chain and even particularly procurement, I think, is in such an early stage where millennials can truly shape the future of where it's going.
To add to that, I think scalability is a big plus for me because supply chain management is very scalable. People with supply chain skills and knowledge therefore have many choices in terms of locations, industries, communities, or different countries where they work in. So in addition to the tremendous impact that it brings on the bottom line of a company, it's the scalability of supply chain that really makes it the artery of any organization.
Yeah, you really do get so much exposure to all facets of the organization and get to see the inner workings of it. Specifically for myself, I was attracted to consulting based on the client interaction, the fast-paced, ever-changing work environment. And both that consultative aspect and specifically supply chain management really tend to challenge you from a critical thinking capacity. And I think consulting and supply chain management are both great fields for millennials because of not only the exposure that you get to an organization's operations, but because of how you're continuously challenged.
Okay. And what kind of advice would each of you have for millennials who are interested in pursuing a career in supply chain management? Amrish, why don't you start?
To me, it's simple. Don't think twice. If you're looking to get exposed to different areas of the business, then a career in supply chain provides you that perfect opportunity. To me, it's like working for different organizations within an organization in itself. We've said it before, it has tremendous impact on the bottom line. It gives you a complete understanding of how the different elements of the business fit together, and the added advantage is its scalability. So you put all that together, and it's undoubtedly the perfect place for a millennial who's interested to I guess, launch that career to start off with.
Yeah, because of the maturity, I mean, it really gives you the opportunity to be innovative and apply yourself and use your skill set in technology and prove that you can change the supply chain's operations for the better.
Yeah, I would say that supply chain is a lot of fun, and there's so much that falls under supply chain. So my advice would be for especially younger talent that's thinking about entering supply chain is to really do your homework and really discover what's out there before taking a step forward, because there is so much within supply chain. It's definitely worth taking the time, especially as in your senior year of college or your final year of your MBA. I think those are really critical, pivotal points to really think about supply chain as a great career.
Okay. And to wrap things up, Christina, how can the people listening to this podcast go about nominating their rising supply chain talent for the 30 Under 30?
Yeah, nominations for the 2016 class of Rising Stars are now being accepted. So if you know someone under 30 who is making a big impact on supply chain, visit 30under30.thomasnet.com to nominate them today.
Well, thank you all so much for your time today. It was really a pleasure getting each of your perspectives on this topic, and congratulations on being recognized as a Thomas Net and Institute for Supply Management 30 Under 30 Rising Star.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for listening and joining in.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful being here.